busy day walking around, and then your phone dies on you? Just think, that whole time you were using energy to move around, while your phone battery was running out of electric charge. What if we could capture some of that energy from walking? What if we could charge our phones just by carrying them in our pockets? Hi, I'm Matt Stillwell, Assistant Director of Education for the Wisconsin MRSEC. Scientists and engineers are working on technology that might help make this dream a reality. Today I'm going to show you how to build a simple version of that technology using some inexpensive supplies that you might already have lying around the house. The technology I mentioned is called a Triboelectric Nanogenerator. I'll just call them TANGs for short. Here's an example of what I'm going to show you how to build. Let's take a look at a schematic so we can see what's going on inside.
The tang we're going to build consists of a ball which has been wrapped in tape inside a shell. This shell has aluminum foil lining the inside of each half. Note the gap between the aluminum foil pieces, as that's important for its operation. The device also has wires connecting each aluminum foil piece to a small light called an LED.
To understand how this device works, we'll need to talk about the effect for which these devices are named, the triboelectric effect, or triboelectricity.
Triboelectricity is a form of static electricity that occurs when two materials come into contact, like a balloon and your hair, and it has to do with the atoms in the materials. Atoms are the building blocks of all materials and are made up of three particles: protons, neutrons, and electrons. These particles have a property called electric charge. Well, the neutron has no charge, but protons have a positive charge and electrons have a negative charge. When two materials come into contact, like this balloon and piece of fur, there is an exchange of electrons where one material takes some electrons from the other material. When the two materials separate, one of them now has more positive charge and the other has more negative charge. If you've ever walked across carpet while wearing socks and then shocked yourself on a doorknob, you've encountered one of the ways those charges can rebalance themselves. Triboelectric nanogenerators take advantage of the same principle as you shocking yourself on that doorknob, except instead of shocking yourself, they send the electricity through a circuit. For this device design, each time we shake the device, it sends the ball from one side to the other. When the ball hits one side, the tape covering it contacts the aluminum foil and takes some electrons in the process. As we continue shaking, the ball travels to the other side, bringing the electrons with it. Once the ball hits the other side, the electrons conduct through the aluminum foil and wires, causing a flash of light from the LED as the charges rebalance. Each time we shake the ball back and forth, we'll create a flash of light.
Let's go over the supplies that you'll need to build a tang before we get into the actual building itself. For each tang that you want to build, you will need a plastic egg, but really any shell will work. So you might even be able to use a toilet paper roll or maybe a plastic bottle that you've cut in half. You'll need a bouncy ball, but again, any sort of small object will work here as long as it fits inside that shell. So you could use a die, or you could even use a small rock. You will need two wires, like these jumper wires here, or you can use a pair of scissors to trim the plastic off of these sandwich bag ties. Or you might take a pipe cleaner and untwist it to get two wires like I used in this one here. You will need an LED, like this one here, or you can potentially get one from an inexpensive flashlight that you don't want to use anymore. I took this one here from a keychain flashlight. You will also need some aluminum foil, as well as some clear office tape. If it's frosted, that's okay as well. And if you have it, some double-sided tape will be quite helpful. If you do not have double-sided tape, you can just make a loop with your clear tape. I also find it helpful to have a pair of scissors in the process. Now, once you've assembled your supplies, we're going to start by getting some bare wire, some exposed wire from these cables that we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off this little black piece at the end, and it should just pull right off. If you have any issues pulling that piece off, you can get a pair of pliers to help get a hold of them. Now these wires are going to need to connect a circuit outside the device to the aluminum foil on the inside of the egg. So we're going to feed this wire through these little holes in the bottom of your eggs. So hopefully you can see those. If there's a manufacturing defect, you can use a pair of scissors to poke the little holes out. So we're going to feed the wire, take the exposed end, and we're going to put it through one of the halves on this egg. And we can go ahead and do that with our other side as well. So I'll make sure that there's some exposed wire. And I'm going to feed that in through this other side. So I'll have one wire on each half of the egg. Next, you can grab some of your double-sided tape and you're going to take some of your double-sided tape and you're going to connect it just beneath that exposed wire piece. So let's see if I can get a good shot of that. And then you're going to push it up against the edge and secure it on the inside. So it'll look a little something like that. And for this other one, I'll go ahead and show you, if you do not have double-sided tape, you can use a roll of single-sided tape like this. So let's get our other wire. Looks like mine fell out. Put it back in here. Again, I'm going to tape just below this edge, make sure that I'm not covering up the exposed metal. And then I'm going to smush that down onto the bottom. And so now I've got something that looks like this. So I've got wires inside each half of my eggs, and they are secured. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a strip of aluminum foil. In this, I cut off one that's just a little wider than the eggs are themselves. And so this is where I like to use the scissors to cut two little squares. And we're going to take one piece of this aluminum foil and we're going to put it into each half of the egg. So I'm going to put it in like this. And I'm going to push it up against, I want to make contact with the egg itself, and then I also want to make sure that I'm making contact with the wire. So you can see that exposed end of the wire there, so I want to make sure that my foil is going to be touching that. We need those to connect. And then I'm also going to push the aluminum foil up against the sides to make sure that our ball doesn't get stuck while it's bouncing around on the inside. So there's one half, and now I'll repeat for the other half. Now, one other thing to keep in mind, if you get any aluminum foil that's sticking up over the edge, kind of like this piece here, just go ahead and push that down. We want to make sure that there's a gap between the two foil halves when the egg is closed. Alright, and you can check this to make sure that when it's closed, the aluminum foil isn't going to be touching from the two halves. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our ball or whatever small object you've decided on, and we're going to wrap this in tape. So I'm going to start my roll, and we're going to just try and wrap. So we're trying to get the thinnest layer of tape that we can, but also covering the entire ball. So we'll kind of stick it. Sometimes with these bouncy balls, it's not super sticky, so you might have to stick the tape to itself. And just kind of keep going around until you get the whole thing covered. I find it helpful to scrunch some of the corners down. And there we go. I now have a ball that has been wrapped in tape. I'm going to put that inside my egg. Now I can go ahead and close this up. And I can grab my LED. And I'm going to insert the LED. Has these two little legs. They're called leads. And we're going to stick these leads one into each one of these little black pieces here. So we'll get something like that. If you do not have these wires and you're using something like bag ties, you're going to want to make sure that you wind the wire around the leads. And I actually found it kind of helpful to bend the lead back on itself to really get a nice secure grip on that. And there you go. Your Triboelectric nanogenerator is ready for use. Now these nanogenerators don't produce a ton of electricity, so your light might be dim. I recommend finding a dark place to test it. These tangs, though, they were made using some simple materials. And here's one that I made using some materials that I had around the house. Could you make more electricity if you used different materials to wrap the ball or line the egg? Could you make more electricity by connecting multiple tangs to one another? Let me know what you try in the comments below.
One application of triboelectric nanogenerators that scientists and engineers are working on is called blue energy. A whole bunch of nanogenerators, similar to the ones we made today, would be connected in a big array that sits in the ocean. As the ocean waves slosh around, they shake the nanogenerators. These arrays would harvest the energy from those waves.